Well, there's nothing normal about a crater this size in the middle of someone's backyard, and there's nothing normal about a pipe like this unable to handle all the water from this week's storms. If you take a closer look, you can see the pipe is corroded, and now the people who live here want to know who's going to pay for all the damage.
That's a lot of water.
This man's basement used to be a fun place for the grandkids to hang out.
Well, it's not been very fun.
But thankfully, they weren't down here when water came flooding through Thursday night.
Broke the door right off its hinges. I mean, they would have been killed because of the force of that water. It was extreme.
John McIntyre wasn't home either, but he had a feeling something was wrong when he got an alert on his phone.
My water sensor that I have in the basement said it detected water, and I thought, was my water heater broke? What's going on?
It all started here, a storm drain in the backyard that never used to look like this.
The neighbor up here said there were two geysers coming up and he told us they were about 20 feet high. Right now the pipe is totally smashed, totally corroded.
At first he was under the impression that the city's insurance company, Travelers, would be able to pay for the damage, but he says his last phone call with the company wasn't very encouraging.
They said their policy for the city doesn't cover acts of God, and that would be an act of God, an extreme amount of rainfall. They still have to do their full investigation, which I completely understand, but it's clear in my mind that it's a failure of the pipe.
What? Hold on, I'm just gonna get video for them so they have it for insurance.
It actually got this high and then it broke this window. 33,000 gallons of water were pumped out.
The man who lives here didn't think it would be a problem for the city's insurance company to pay for a storm that ruined his home.
I was just kind of dumbfounded.
Until he saw our story with one of his neighbors a few miles away.
Right now the pipe is totally smashed, totally corroded. They said their policy for the city doesn't cover acts of God, and that would be an act of God, an extreme amount of rainfall.
That's when we called you.
The city of Cottonwood Heights told him the same thing. Different sewer, similar problem.
Both Cottonwood Heights and Travelers told me initially that it was an act of God, but they weren't going to do an investigation.
He says this isn't an act of God because there have always been problems on this street, all because of a tiny drainage system with only a few grates.
They were going to redo the drainage system on all of Scottish Drive starting this fall, which is very good news.
It's good news for him, but only if it ends up being true. A spokesperson for the city says crews aren't sure if the drainage system is up to code, so they're looking into it before they commit to making changes.
Obviously, we would like to be compensated for our damages. It's very expensive.
The man who lives here used to keep a lot of expensive toys in the basement. He's just glad his grandkids weren't home when it all came to an end.
I mean, they would have been killed because of the force of that water. It was extreme.
A few miles away, another homeowner felt the same way.
Hold on, I'm just gonna get video for them so they have it for insurance.
The city's insurance company did get that video and others, but it hasn't helped either of the victims.
Our claim was officially denied by telephone on Saturday, September 7th.
He says the agent offered him a $7,000 settlement to release the city of all liability. That's less than 10% of what he lost, valued at about $91,000.
The city doesn't even know if their system meets code.
When Fox 13 asked for public records about the city's storm drain system showing its specifications and capabilities, the city said those records were never handed over by Salt Lake County when Cottonwood Heights became its own city. A spokesperson for the city told Fox 13 they didn't know if the storm drains were up to code.
So when Cottonwood Heights incorporated in 2005, we would have made available all information we had on the storm drain system. This issue really is just not a Salt Lake County issue.
The records we don't have at this point, and I don't know. He said that they handed them over. I'm not sure where they're at because we don't have those.
The city manager went on to say they know where the storm drains are and they know the size of the pipes, but other than that, they'll need to hire an engineer to do a full investigation.
I was baffled when I heard the city did not have any records or documentation.
The pipe is totally smashed, totally corroded.
The city now says the pipe should be fit to handle a 10-year storm. In other words, a storm that only has a 1 in 10 chance of happening every year.
Our area was definitely more than a a 10-year storm.
Well, there's a big discrepancy.
Fox 13 received rainfall data from the National Weather Service showing there was only 0.28 of an inch during a 3-hour period of the storm's peak. That wouldn't even meet the requirements for a 1-year storm.
Our data is different than what you have. It was probably potentially closer to a 100-year storm.
The city points to a website called Weather Underground, which allows homeowners to collect their own data. It shows up to an inch of rainfall, a downpour, in just a 10-minute window.
I know the National Weather Service is a certified agency. I don't know that Weather Underground is a certified agency or not. And so I personally think an insurance company should go by what the National Weather Service says.
Well, at one point this summer, a spokesperson for the city said they had no idea that their storm drain system was not up to code. They blamed the county for not handing over important documents when the city became incorporated in 2005. Still, they say it had nothing to do with flooding like this. Here's something the city did not mention, a report they created the following year which proves some of the problems they face today should have been prevented more than a decade ago.
Hold on, I'm just gonna get video for them so they have it for insurance.
Homeowners in Cottonwood Heights thought all they would need is video like this for the city to make them whole.
Right now the pipe is totally smashed, totally corroded.
At the time, they weren't angry, they were grateful. Nobody was home, nobody was hurt.
I mean, they would have been killed because of the force of that water. It was extreme.
Our claim was officially denied by telephone on Saturday, September 7th. The city doesn't even know if their system meets code.
Since the floods, Fox 13 has asked for a number of public records detailing specifics about Cottonwood Heights storm drain system.
Records we don't have at this point. Not sure where they're at because we don't have those.
They couldn't find the documents, but we were able to find something else on our own. A study commissioned by the city in 2006, which states this pipe on Tyndale Court should be replaced. Because the invert of the pipe has deteriorated, there is a high potential that water could undermine the soil column and create widespread property damage. The city's prediction was accurate. Tyndale Court is where John McIntyre lives.
In Washington, D.C., we're currently serving an 18-month mission.
Since we uncovered this document, Cottonwood Heights has declined all interviews. In an email, city manager Tim Tingey wrote, "There were repairs made in 2015. Portions of the pipe were deteriorating, but they felt this segment was adequate in normal rainstorms." We asked for his source, whatever study he was getting his information from. He did not provide one, saying, again, there's no documentation. As for the 2006 report, the city manager says, of course the pipe was deteriorated. It began deteriorating the instant it was placed and buried.
What the city's doing is they're just trying to avoid doing what's right. That is just plain dishonest. Do we really want those people representing us?
John McIntyre says he was offered a $12,000 settlement, which would release the city of all liability if he accepts. His insurance claim, which was denied, was worth more than $90,000. Reporting in studio, Adam Herbets, Fox 13 News, Utah.